Here's the photo that Christine showed, and I said it's a glass plate negative, which means that we're looking through the back of it, and on the front of the glass plate negative, somebody wrote Princeton Ice 1910. So here's the bottom of the lake, as Christine said. Here's an ice wall, which was at the bottom of the lake. The ice wall was built out of stone, and it allowed the ice to go up against a vertical surface, so you could get a nice clean edge. Imagine if your ice was bumping up against here, you would have to throw all that ice away at the bottom because it would all be contaminated by some sediment. So here's the first of the 3 ice houses. Here's the elevated tower. By this time, Stephen Marjoram had died in 1901. His son took over the business, and his son built, we think his son built the upper dam to form a sedimentation area so that the lower dam the lower lake wouldn't be completely filled up. And then in 1906, James Marjoram sold it to a group of businessmen in Princeton, and they created what they called the Princeton Ice Company. And with new capital, they reinvested, and we think that they built this elevator, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. And here's a barn up on the hill, which we thought was for stabling the horses. So here's a close-up of this, and so here's the ice wall, here's the dam, here's a drain to drain the lake when you need to, and here's the tower. Up in the tower is a machine, and you can't quite see the belt here, but this is a chimney for a steam engine, and this belt went up and ran this ice elevator. And so this is from 1904, Gifford's ice tools, everything for the Iceman, right here. And so you see here's the steam engine, and then here's this leather belt that goes up to the top and turns this, this conveyor, and the conveyor lifts the ice cakes up, and then you have the various levels of the gallery where you can drop them off, and see here they're loading them into the ice house. And over here, this is called an apron, and this swings up and down, it's hinged here, and so depending on the height of the water in the lake, this is allowed, this can go up and down to accommodate that. And here's the elevator apron, which we're going to see a little bit more of. So when the construction was taking place on the lower dam, as Christine said, a protocol was set up because we knew this was an archaeological hot zone. And the protocol was that if the contractors hit anything, to stop and let's see what it was. So this is Anthony Soriano, who was an assistant engineer at the township and worked extensively on this project. He's now left the township. But here he is calling Bob Kaiser, or perhaps Deanna, and saying, we got a problem here, they've hit something. And so this is what it looked like, and everybody's had no idea what it was, and Hunter Research excavated it, and there it is. That is the apron for the ice elevator. And what was remarkable is that it was incredibly preserved. Here are the bottom wheels at the bottom of the conveyor, and here's part of the chain that actually pulled the ice up. And so all of this was recorded by the archaeologists, and it was quite a remarkable find that it was there. You can see here's where those wheels were, right here. This wheel. So this is looking up, and here's the chains, and the chains go up here and carry the ice cakes up. Also quite remarkable were some artifacts that were found. I believe it was Deanna who was walking around the lake, at this point it was dredged, and said, there's some little thing sticking up in the ground there, and pointed it out to the archaeologists, and they dug out this ice plow in a remarkable state of preservation. So this is from perhaps 1905, 1910, and here's an illustration of this plow, and it's hooked up to the horse here, and so this is for cutting the grooves, and it has different set of teeth here, and it goes down, as I said, about 3 inches. And then we also found 3 marker guides, and this is one of those wedges that I said. You see, it's a wedge there that you take and you put into the groove, and you pull it, and now you separate the ice. and this was like a long rake for pulling the ice across the sheets. This is what the lower dam looked like. Christine had said that because the spillway was failing, the township had put these giant boulders up in front of it to hold it. And after those boulders were taken away, that's what it looked like. That was the level of deterioration. And you know, it was really bordering on collapse, which would have drained the lake and also would have flooded a lot of the houses and properties downstream. So a really interesting part of this whole story is that because Stephen Marjoram owned a quarry and had unlimited quantities of stone, he was able to build all this stone masonry work on the dam. And so there are many, many historic stone features. Not only did he, we think, bring some of the stone down from Marjoram's quarry on Harrison Street, but there's also a quarry not far from Mountain Lake. There's a little quarry road there. Is that where the church is? Right around there? Nearby. And so we're not sure exactly where they came from, but there's a tremendous amount of this argillite. Well, the spillway had to be extended. Joe Scupian did the analysis for the water flow, and determined that the earthen dam had to be raised, which Deanna is going to talk about, and the spillway had to be extended because the capacity wasn't big enough. So we didn't have enough stone, and we were trying to figure out where we're going to get more stone. And then when the contractor was excavating for what you'll see with Deanna, a channel wall that was put in to protect the bank, when they were excavating for that, you can see the rebar here, they hit a vein of argillite. And so, quite remarkably, we had our own little quarry in the excavation right there. And here's some of the stones that came out. And here's the reconstruction of the spillway going on. Wolfgang Finger, who Bob Kaiser mentioned, he's about 64 years old, and he put all of us to shame the way he worked, and he, with some help, of course, lifting some of these heavy stones. He did all the masonry here, did just a fantastic job. Here are the archaeologists. Here's Deanna on the earthen dam, and Jim Lee, who was the lead archaeologist for Hunter Research on this. And so here's the ice wall that over the years had been covered up, and the sediment had built up here. And so they were excavating and recording the ice wall. And here is a foundation for a building that was in one of the earlier photos I didn't point out, but here's a foundation that was buried there. And so some of these archaeological elements were recorded but left in place. So I mentioned that here's the historic profile of the dam. The dam had to be raised, as Joe determined, and that meant by raising it, the original ice wall was going to get buried. And so we determined that we would build a new ice wall. And so here's the new ice wall under construction. And of course we needed all stone for that because this was left in place. So that original ice wall is still under there. And that's where the vein of argillite that the project hit was so useful. So these are all the historical components at the bottom of the lake. Here's the boiler chimney. Next time you walk by here, if you look, you can see the concrete foundation for the elevator tower, and you can see the chimney for the steam boiler. And here's where the elevator was located. And Jim Lee had the idea that it would be good to mark the location of the elevator. So we put in these 6 piers, which we'll see in a minute. And here's where the ice houses were located. Here is a stone drainage basin where, you remember that pipe was sticking out of the dam. It drained into that basin. And it has a stone culvert that leads out to Mountain Brook. The whole top of the stone culvert is covered with big slabs of argillite. And here's a foundation for a building. And then here is a concrete bridge. And then this is an old stone culvert, also covered with very large slabs of argillite. And then here's the spillway that was reconstructed. The original spillway perhaps went to about there, and it was extended maybe 20%. Is that about right, Joe? And so here you can see this spot. This is now on the western end, and here are where these piers are put in these piers were put in place exactly where that elevator was to show people where it was. And Christine mentioned the interpretation that was part of the original grant. So 3 signs were done originally interpreting the project, and the township elected to do 2 more signs. And all 5 of those signs are going to be installed perhaps in the early spring. And so this is the archaeology sign that, here's the apron, and some of these photos from Library of Congress, and the ice plow. And so all of this is going to be on a sign, so when people walk around there, they can understand the history of the site. And then this is a sign that's going to be about all the rehabilitation that occurred in the last 2 years, from 2010 to 2012.